תודה רבה רבה ליאיר גולן. זו גם הזדמנות לברך שני חברי כנסת שותפים יקרים שיושבים איתנו כאן, השתתפו גם בפאנלים אחר כך, חבר הכנסת גלעד קריב וחברת הכנסת נעמה לזימי. תודה. עוד רגע. מאז היבחרו מחדש של דונלד טראמפ לנשיאות ארצות הברית, נראה שהמעצמה החזקה בעולם התפטרה מתפקידה כמובילת העולם החופשי והליברלי, וטרפה את כלפיו של הסדר העולמי. נמצא איתנו כאן היום שגריר גרמניה בישראל, שטפן זייברט, שכיבד אותנו בנוכחותו, והוא יעלה לבמה לשיחה עם דוקטור מורסיאנו, מנכ"ל מכון מתווים למדיניות חוץ, על איך יראה הציר הדמוקרטי-ליברלי במציאות החדשה, מה יהיה תפקידה של גרמניה בעיצובו, ואיזה מקום ראוי שישראל תתפוס בו. בבקשה.
שלום לכולם.
Shalom. Should we do it in Hebrew or in English, actually? The first question on the stage.
אני מצטער, העברית שלי לא מספיק טובה כדי
Smart choice.
לשוחח על דברים מסובכים. So let's
Perfectly
stick to
said.
English or German.
It's not easy, by the way, to follow Yair Golan and the important statement that was made here, but I think if we try to connect the dots, one of the interesting things that we learned in the last couple of years, that what we experience in Israel, this fight, this struggle that Yair described between democratic and anti-democratic forces, we are not alone in this game. In many of the things that we are actually experiencing in Israel today, from the Kellner legislation to the judicial reform altogether, are pages from somebody else's book. They're not Israeli. We are part of a global fight or a global campaign between democratic and anti-democratic forces. And I think that what we experience today, when we look at our world, is the end of all rules and taboos, basically. I mean, taboos, rules, and conventions that were part of the way we do politics, the way we do diplomacy, has been thrown out of the window. Think about the Zelensky-Trump meeting, all the way to the Trump-Gaza Riviera plans, and even to the current discussion about the next head of Shabak. We are living in somewhat of a postmodern world altogether, which is also, you know, when the old order falls, maybe a chance to redefine the order, the liberal democratic order, and that's what we are discussing at the moment, the future of the democratic liberal order. So to sort this mess, I have the pleasure of having with me my dear colleague, Ambassador Stefan Zeyberט, the ambassador of Germany in Israel, basically. And Ambassador Zeyberט, yeah, definitely, is not just the representative of one of the last, well, let's not make it dramatic, one of the bastions of the liberal world today, but I also think that we're talking about a diplomat that distinguished himself on the level of engagement with the Israeli public, on the level of commitment. Starting from the judicial reform, but I think one of the main contributions when it comes to the hostages, the sacred work that was done regarding the hostages together with the ambassador, we call it Avodat Kodesh in Hebrew, and I think, by the way, this is one of the things that we are going to have a lasting depth, basically. I think, by the way, בהחלט מגיע לנו מחיאות כפיים על התרומה. So, Ambassador Zeyberט also is an ambassador that is known not just to talk the talk, but also walk the walk. And I'm referring to the quite odd decision by the ambassador to hike parts of the Israeli trail with prominent Israelis in June, July, in this humidity, in the quite
Throughout the year, every week, one mikta.
Yeah, well, speaking
Tomorrow
of...
I will be hiking.
Really? Which
Yes.
part?
In the south, but not very far in the south because it's getting too hot now.
Well, speaking of diplomatic sacrifice, that's what we're talking about. But actually, I want to relate more with my first question to your experience, to your previous experience as a spokesperson. I'm going to tell the audience that a known secret that the ambassador is not a career diplomat. He served as the spokesperson for the German government for more than a decade. So I want to relate to your understanding of public mindset on that level and speak with you a little bit about what we refer to as the failure of the democratic comeback. Now, we all know the story in the last couple of years. We have cases of illiberal, anti-democratic governments. Well, okay. Anti-democratic governments, basically, that take the control, basically, and afterwards what we see is a democratic force that take the control back. We see that
I think
with
they
Biden.
want to know how I see this.
Yeah. I'm about to ask you.
Let me... Sorry, Guy. I think you're right. I think you're right in the sense that the liberal democracy camp in our countries, in my country, in your country, is under a very severe stress test. I can only speak about my country. Maybe it's better for me to do that. I think there is a growing dissatisfaction with the way policy is conducted. There is a growing number of citizens who think that the traditional way of conducting democratic parliamentary business is not delivering for them anymore. I am a great advocate for this traditional liberal democratic parliamentary system, but I do see the challenge. I think now we have to get it right. We have to show people that liberal democracy can deliver on the issues that matter most to people. We must not be distracted. We must not give people an opportunity to think that a strongman regime can do better. And there is, inexplicable to me, I will be very honest, a growing yearning for a kind of strongman democracy or an illiberal democracy where a president can just sign executive orders like there's nothing to it. But we all know that parliamentary democracy is a cumbersome and sometimes slow business of compromise seeking. I still believe that is the best way to get everybody's interests, aligned. But I have to admit that there is a growing disdain for that, and we must get it right. When I say we, I mean the democratic liberal camp, which can be the democratic right, the democratic left, and everything in between. Because if we don't get it right, there will be extremists benefiting from it. I see that in my own country, and I'm very committed to helping to get it right.
And part of the discussion. So the burden of truth is on us, basically, in fighting those anti-democratic forces. But it's also a little bit beyond the domestic issue. It's also about how we communicate democracy with democracies. We had a Trump visit 2 weeks ago. And I think what we've seen there is, for the first time, a completely different approach to foreign policy. We used to be about democracies working together to present values to the world. And here the visit was all about business. Trillions of dollars of ROI, return on investment, and so on. So from a German perspective, if what we used to represent on foreign policy is values and norms, do norms and values still matter when it comes to today's foreign policy, or we are talking about interest first?
Speaking as a German, which is also speaking as a European, I think it is clear that, of course, we have interests. We are one of the major exporting countries in the world, so we have commercial interests. We have an interest in free trade routes and all that. But we have committed ourselves to the UN Charter, to a set of values also embodied in the documents of the European Union. We are not just about interests. Values are also our interests. We have an interest in democracy or in respect for human rights. This is not just nice to have on in a Sunday speech. These are also our interests. When you look at the situation in Gaza right now? What is at the core of the dispute that we have, or the criticism, the questions we have on the way that the food is now, the humanitarian aid is now delivered? This is not a question of interests, it's a question of values, how we see each other as human beings. And when we see pictures out of Gaza of very terrible suffering, or when we see that, yes, the aid is getting in, and I'm very grateful for that, but it's nowhere near enough, and it doesn't reach everybody, and it creates tumultuous scenes, then this is a question of humanitarian approach. It is not just, it's not interests, it's how we look at each other and how we look at ourselves as human beings, and I think in that sense, values are still very much at the core of our policy.
And that's a classic segue to our case, to Israeli-German relations. 60 years for the diplomatic relations between Israel and Germany. And I think we tend to describe those relations, maybe unlike the US-Israeli relations, as based on values, based on history, identity, about norms. And the question is, when Israel changes its face as a democracy, the importance it gives to continue being a democracy. There's a claim that it affects the kind of relations, the strategic relations between the countries, because if the value change, the relation change. Now, this question, when I wrote it a couple of weeks ago, was quite theoretical. And then this week happened. And I'm talking about the unusual tone, criticism from the chancellor, from the foreign minister, against Israeli policy in Gaza. And specifically, I relate to, I'm quoting the chancellor, putting red lines about the values of international law, which are so important in German foreign policy. So if you look at the last week, how should we Israelis see this new tone? I mean, are we talking about some kind of a temporal crisis, or we're talking about a change in the relations?
I think it's important to point out what hasn't changed. What hasn't changed is our very strong commitment to this partnership and friendship we have with Israel, and we've had for decades. And this is a commitment to both the existence and the secure existence of the State of Israel and everybody who lives in it, as it is a commitment to the liberal democracy of this state, as it is embedded in your Declaration of Independence. We've said for decades that we stand so close to Israel, of course, for reasons of history, but also because Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, which is true. So any change, any threat to this, any impression that things might be slipping, of course, is a matter of concern to your friends as well, and not just Germany, but all around the world. So yes, we did have questions in the debate over the judicial overhaul. We had questions about, what about checks and balances? And yes, we do have questions now about the conduct of the war. And the Chancellor made some very strong statements in the past week, and so has the Foreign Minister. Why did he make them? Not because the general approach or the deep conviction that we have, the deep commitment that we have for Israel has in any way changed, not because the way we look at the 7th of October has in any way changed. It was a horrible terrorist atrocity, a chain of crimes that is still going on to this very day with the hostages that are still being tortured in the tunnels in Gaza, and this is an unspeakable crime. And there's nobody in Germany who sees it any other way. What has changed is that a couple of weeks ago, we still had a ceasefire in Gaza, and we had sufficient aid coming in to feed the people and give them, in these terrible circumstances, a half-dignified life. Now we don't have that anymore. We have a return to military operations. We have an escalation of military operations accompanied by very strong rhetoric. And this, plus the images that we see on our television screens every day, this has impressed the Chancellor and has impressed the German government and the German public. One thing you must not forget is that What the German public sees on their television screens, in their television news every day, is different from what you see in mainstream media in this country. It's different. There's a lot. My own mother calls me, I don't know, once a week to tell me about things that she's seen from Gaza and wants to know what I'm doing about it and everything. And she is as pro-Israel as they come. I'm just telling you that this is the situation. This is the communication landscape in which people form their impressions on Israel. And this is what the Chancellor has tried to make clear, and I think he speaks for many people in Germany and in Europe. And it should not be dismissed as anti-Semitism, which of course it isn't, or anti-Israel. It is concern, deep concern for a friend, coming from a friend about a friend.
My last question, I would like to focus on a real threat that is currently in front of the Israeli civil society, and that's the Kelm legislation. The idea of taxing, again, a step that we know very well from the Putin's world and Erdogan's world of taxing foreign support and contribution from foreign governments to Israeli civil society organization. Now, civil society is such an important aspect of German-Israeli foreign policy. German foreign policy altogether, the idea of connection not just between government but between societies. And when we are looking at this specific aspect, how this legislation, worst case scenario, if it goes through, would affect Israeli-German relations, and what can we do to stop it?
This is an issue that is of great concern to us as it is to many of my European colleagues, I know that. And many of them have spoken to the Israeli government and to members of the Knesset. I think there is a misconception about what foreign countries, foreign state actors do to these Israeli NGOs. This is not about importing foreign values or any such thing, as it is sometimes shown. There was a demonstration against the German embassy not so long ago they had a poster with a very heavy military boot in the German colors crushing the state of Israel. And this was about the German support for certain NGOs. This is not what it is. These NGOs they originate in this country. This is the work of Israeli patriots who love their country, who have a certain idea of how liberal democracy should be, and they exercise their rights in such a liberal democracy. And yes, for that, they are given support, financial support, from Germany and France and Britain and Japan and Canada and God knows where. But it's not the import of some foreign values as it is often described. We think it would be really, really bad for liberal democracy in this country if this important actor of civil society, which is the NGOs, were to be silenced by an 80% tax. And I really hope that many people will see that this would be something that would affect the relations with many countries. And this is not about left or right. It is about the idea of what a democracy is. And part of a democracy in every country, including in mine, are NGOs who may be asking critical and sometimes annoying questions, annoying from the viewpoint of the government of the day, but that's what it is. I don't... So I hope that this whole issue will be reconsidered.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Zeyberט. Thank you for your commitment and your insights.